Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our latest how-to webinar. I'm absolutely delighted to say we're joined by Karen, who's going to talk to us today about building an authentic approach to positively influence others. And I'm sure Karen will go into more detail what that means in a second. I'll let Karen introduce it. But as always with these things, we'd love to hear your questions and your comments. Be as interactive as possible. You've got the chat box, you've got the Q&A box at the bottom. Please do use that as we go through. I know a lot of people do quite often watch these sessions from the recordings that we put on, whether it's for the Northern Affinity partners on the Mighty Networks platform or on YouTube or any of the social medias. So if you do have any questions that come from that, I'm sure, put them our way. I'm sure between myself and Karen, we can help with that. So even if you're not watching live, please do kind of contact us. We're happy to do that. So I'll stop talking and I'll pass you over to the person everyone wants to listen to. So Karen, over to you.
Right, thanks, Michael. Morning, everybody. It's great to be back doing another session. Just a quick introduction for people who don't know me. I'm Karen Amos from BrightBird Coaching and Training. I work with managers and business owners and teams on the people part of the business, essentially. So whilst, yes, we look at building a profitable business or an effective organisation, I'm actually the person who goes in to try and get the best out of the teams and all those niggly team conflicts and the communication stuff. I really enjoy rolling my sleeves up and getting my hands in there to sort out some of those gnarly issues. So as Michael says, today we're going to be looking at building an authentic approach. So can I just check, Michael, can we see that?
I can see your screen. Yeah, perfect.
Hey, right, we're winning the day already. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to talk through a few ideas and concepts with you and hopefully give you a bit of food for thought and also have some tips as well to share with you. It might help as well if there are any areas that you're interested in. As Michael says, the recording will be going online, so you can come back to have a look at some of the slides and check through perhaps the exercises when you have a little bit more time as well. Press pause on those. So, okay. So when we think about influencing, what in my mind, my interpretation is actually we're looking at who we are, what we do, that impacts what we say and how we say it, but that then leads to our impact on other people. Now, it's really interesting that I looked it up for this session. It was 1937 that Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People was first published. And I don't think it's been out of print since. It's like worldwide bestseller and all the rest of it. But what I'd like to do, because there were lots of critics, and I think rightly so, of that book, and it was of an age really, and whilst, yes, there's still some value in it, I think there's a new, more, again, I'm going to use the word authentic way of approaching those kinds of things. So what I'd like to talk about first is authentic leadership. This is an approach that I discovered a few years ago, and to be honest, I wish I'd have found it a lot sooner because it answered so many questions for me. It was created by this guy, Bill George, who was the chief exec of a corporation in America called Medtronic. So he's very much got a business background, a corporate background. But what he looked at was how we integrate you, the leader, with you, the person, and how you can be yourself, just being the person you are, but being really effective at what you do. Now, the reason that this came to my attention, I was working with lots of clients who were absolutely stressed out of their tree. And they were saying things to me like, my kids wouldn't recognize me at home. I'm not like this at home, you know. And I thought, wow, mate, no wonder you're so stressed. You're actually spending at least 10, 12 hours a day being a person you don't even like. There has to be a way that we can join up you, the good, nice person that you are, with the person you are at work and in your business and who other people encounter. So this approach is authentic leadership. Whilst we talk about leadership, and it's easy to think, well, you know, if you're in a smaller business, well, I don't manage staff or whatever. Leadership is about the influence you have on other people. It's how you influence them, whether that's in your family, in your community, in your work. So I suggest that the same principles apply there. So what he looked at were certain aspects, certain qualities that we need to be an effective, authentic person. Now, this authenticity word, I'm going to say, it's been done to death, and I don't know about you, Michael, I am sick of hearing the word authentic nowadays. So
it kind of starts to feel not authentic using the word authentic.
It's a bit. Yeah, it is. Yeah, because what it comes with, isn't it, is that thing that says, take me as you find me, warts and all. And actually, that isn't what authentic leadership's about. It's about being your best self. Not that, you know, I'm a truly obnoxious person, but I'm not going to change because that's me. That's really not what it's about. But I think that appears to be, in my experience, the Facebook definition of authenticity. So what he talks about is that we need these certain qualities, and the number one is self-awareness. So back to that thing, it's not about take me as you find me, warts and all, but it's actually, in order to be your best self, you need to know what your weaknesses, strengths are, but also your values, what you stand for. By knowing it, you can do something about it. The other one's relational transparency. Now, let's face it, you know, a good business model wouldn't be a business model without some indecipherable language in it, would it? So I've kindly interpreted. But relational transparency is actually you just sharing your thoughts and beliefs honestly and genuinely. So it's that thing about no games or hidden agendas. And that we solicit and consider other people's viewpoints. Essentially, we're fair in our dealings with people. And then what he calls an internalized moral perspective, essentially that you've got a moral compass that is resistant to outside pressures. Now, I really like these two phrases because I think and to be honest, the ones I carry with me, which is right, even if no one's doing it, wrong is wrong, even if everyone's doing it, and doing the right thing when nobody's watching. Do a quick check now. How does that sit with you? Are there a few times you feel a little bit wobbly about that? Well, okay, there's a reminder to start work on something again to be your best self. So if you think about the people you know, you work with, you look up to, I will bet you they do these things well. The people you remember, the best boss you ever had, they will do these things well. But I don't know about your experience there, Michael.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely completely agree with all that. I mean, the one thing I would definitely pick up on is the knowing your weaknesses is such a, I think that's such a valuable trait in all walks of life, actually, whatever you know, whether it's just kind of personal relationships, in doing your work, in sport, in whatever it is, knowing what you are not good at. And it's not necessarily about then saying, okay, well, I'm going to be good at that, but knowing that you are not as good at that and then reacting. Obviously, different situations would require different changes and processes, but knowing that is such an important thing, and being honest with yourself as well. I think that really makes a big difference in a lot of areas.
Yeah, no, you're right. And I think there's a really good point there about knowing you're not good at something doesn't mean to say then I have to be, but actually knowing you're not good at it then says, who do I know who might be? You know, and we do that all the time. And I know we do that all the time within the Northern Affinity, which is, I'm no good at that, or that's not my strength, but actually I know these people who are. And we bring them in and they start and add the real value that we need.
Absolutely. So Andy's asked a question about who should we approach to determine what our weaknesses are?
Yeah, good point, Andy, because there is that thing, isn't there, that we all have that blind spot, don't we, that personal blind spot. I've got to be honest, because I know lots of people are really big fans of things like, you know, 360 type assessments and asking other people. And those kind of things can have real value, just doing that informally and asking other people. But we've got to be careful who we ask, because I think it is really easy to feel that we should throw ourselves out there. And we need to be prepared that we can emotionally deal with the feedback that we get. You know, I think we should challenge ourselves, but not at any cost. I think what's absolutely vital for anybody who wants to improve is having a core group of people who will give you some honest feedback. You know, and again, whether that's business or family or friends or whoever it is, really, and that you specifically ask for feedback. So, for example, when I first started doing online training, some friends of mine, business associates, came on the call, but I then asked them very specifically, can you give me some feedback? But I knew they would be honest with me. Can you tell me about my tone, about my pace, about the content? And they did that, and they did it honestly and constructively.
Well, I think the thing about weaknesses as well is not to see it as a negative thing. It's how you view a weakness, because we've all got them. You know, if you don't think you've got them, then you don't, that's your weakness.
Yeah,
if you don't think you've got a weakness, that is your weakness. Because I mean, most of us are only good at quite a limited number of things, actually. So that's no bad thing. But knowing what it is the important thing, not actually what they are. That'd be my kind of general thoughts on weaknesses.
I think so. And there's that good old British tradition that we have of constantly beating ourselves up, isn't it? And you know, that we're not perfect. And actually, I'm a big advocate. I haven't got time to go into it today, but the concept of good enough. So actually, no, we're not perfect, but how good do we actually need to be to do a good job, to get a good result? So I think there's something in there as well. So moving on to the next part. There are 5 dimensions that Bill George talks about in authentic leadership. One of them is about having purpose. So again, think about people who have the most impact, who are the most influential on you and other people, and they have a purpose in life. They have a drive to go get it. You need to know what yours is. And you might have several. There might be something personally, there might be something business or work-wise. That's fine. But know what it is, know why you're here. And sort of think back that if you were going to look at your epitaph, what would it say? What would you like it to say? Then write that into your purpose. So, yeah, okay, a bit grim, you know, saying, you know, you're on your dying days, but actually, what would you like people to be saying about you? And your values, that's the other thing, is where's your line in the sand? What do you stand for? Because again, if you don't know what you stand for, you're going to be swayed, and people will see that and they won't trust you as much. You won't even trust yourself as much to make a decision. The thing is with values, we set them out and we say, oh, well, honesty and integrity. My challenge will be to you is write out your top 5 or 10 values. Now ask yourself, when are the times that you might be tempted to cross that line and compromise those values? We don't like to admit it. There are times we all do it. You know, very few people are going to say they don't have honesty on there, but there are sometimes we are less inclined to be honest than others, and not always for a good reason. Let's be honest, we're all human. So again, I challenge you to write those values down, but just ask yourself, and again, back to that self-awareness, when do you actually cross those lines? Do you really live to them? The heart bit is about courage and conviction, but remembering that we're dealing with other people, which takes you on to relationships. So to be successful, you have to cultivate lots of different kinds of relationships. So again, get a piece of paper, map it out. Who are your relationships? Who are your connections? Do you have those people close to you? As back to Andy's question, that you're able to get feedback and have honest conversations with. If not, how do you get them? And then finally looks at self-discipline, because again, if we're going to influence people, it's back to that what's and all bit. You can't do it. You have to have a point at which you're going to regulate yourself and your behaviour and your actions, because again, otherwise people just won't trust you. So what I've got here, and again, you'll be able to watch this back on the video when it's uploaded, you know, back to Andy's self-awareness bit really, but here's a way to start it. There's a list here. It's not exhaustive by any means, But thinking about each one of these, if you were going to score yourself on a scale of 1 to 10, on each of those, where would you score? Which ones do you do well? Great, give yourself a pat on the back. Which ones could you do better? Those are the ones that you need to work on. What action can you take in order to improve your score in that one? So again, you'll be able to come back to that, have a look at it later on, spend a bit more time on it. So back to my earlier point, authentic leaders, if I was going to put it in a nutshell, have backbone and heart. And essentially, again, think about those people you look back on or you look up so that you really respect. I will bet you those are the qualities that they have. Yeah. So any other thoughts from you, Michael, on that, thinking about people that you know and that you've worked with?
I think what you say there, and I think that when you use the word heart, actually, for me, I mean, I would kind of bring that towards kind of, I guess, passion.
Yeah.
As well, kind of a drive. I'd have those. They're all kind of under that heading, I would say.
Yeah.
And those are the people for me that I think, and I know everyone reacts differently to different people, but for me, they're the people that have always impacted me. I've got that. It's kind of infectious, I guess. Is that
it
type
is.
of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. And that, again, thinking about influencing people, that's absolutely what it is, isn't it? And it's that moves us away from that Dale Carnegie kind of felt a bit smarmy, felt a bit put on. If you do all these things, you will influence people, was quite ungenuine, quite disingenuous in the way lots of people were using it. Whereas absolutely what you're talking about there, those people you've described just are like that. That is them. It's not a persona. It's not something they put it on. So it's dead easy. You know, I spent years trying to be somebody else until I discovered this stuff and had the courage of my convictions. And, you know, actually, it's much easier being yourself. You don't have to keep reminding yourself to do something else. You know,
I think it's important as well, isn't it? Because we've probably all been in situations where you know someone is not being who they actually are.
Yeah.
And straight away the guard goes up, is why are they doing that? And they might not be doing it to mislead you or to be, they're just trying to think they're doing it because that's who they think they should be. So it's not it's not a negative thing as such against them, but straight away there's the lack of trust then that issues
absolutely
come.
Yeah.
And that's where relationships don't build.
Yeah. And you spot it a mile off. Like you said, and for whatever reason, it might be lack of confidence. It might be that somebody is being manipulative. They might be quite disingenuous about why they're doing it. But either way, you spot it a mile off. There'll be a little warning bell going on subconsciously that is saying, don't engage with this person. And we need to listen to it when that happens, really. But when we do see the genuine article, we spot it straight away too. You know, I believe anyway, and that's my experience. So let's have a think about, we talked about, that's kind of the who we are, but let's have a think about what we say and how we say it, because we've got, okay, we are who we are, but we still have to interact with other people. And there are a certain set of skills, really, and I do believe these skills can be learned. I don't think we're born with them, or most people aren't, but we can learn them. If we do them with good heart, with good intention, do not come across as phony, and actually really will help us build some good quality relationships with people. So I love Stephen Covey. Is one of my favourite people. I quote him all the time. But here is some sound advice, which is begin with the end in mind. How many times do we launch into a conversation with somebody or an interaction with somebody and we haven't really thought what we want out of it? Even as business or with a difficult conversation with somebody. You know, I do lots of training on difficult conversations, and most people, what they want to do is get out of that difficult conversation and situation as quickly as possible, get out the door. That's what they want to do, rather than thinking, what outcome do I want? What would be a good outcome? What would be a good result? I'm going into a business meeting. What would be a good result here? It's not necessarily a sale. It might be, you know, I've set up a good sound relationship with this person. and we know that I'll be able to go back to them and contact them later, or they're very clear on what I do. And I think, to me, Michael, that a lot of that is the essence of networking, really, isn't it? And good networking.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Knowing why you're there and why you're having the conversation, absolutely. Yeah, no, absolutely. It's relationship building, isn't it? That's what it is at the end of the day, whatever the context, actually.
Yeah.
Whether it's personal or professional, it's building relationships with people.
Yeah. So thinking about your content, so content, I say this about many things, it is like calories and politicians. It is not all created equal. One size does not fit all. So actually think about what you're saying to people, be that a presentation like this, be it just a conversation. Do you want a friend or a business connection out of this? Because the tone of that is going to be different. Again, that's not to say if you've got a different tone, you're being unauthentic. I'd be a little bit worried if you spoke to all your business connections in exactly the same way you spoke to your kids or your family or your best mate on a night out. We do adapt to our situation, and that's quite appropriate. So again, know the difference, really, because I think back to this authenticity thing, some people are getting it wrong. And again, authenticity is about our best self. Who's your audience? So modify what you're going to say accordingly, and that might be the language you use, the information you give, but get to the point. Again, back to that, begin with the end in mind. Don't leave people hanging, wondering what's this about, because I think we've all had those conversations at one point or another. And then the stuff that we don't say, which we all know is really important. And we've got this whole other dimension now, haven't we, about these online interactions that we have and how we treat them. And I would challenge anybody who hasn't already done so to really think carefully about how you are presenting yourself online and in person. What's the impression you want to give? Things like eye contact. And that can be so difficult online. I'm doing a presentation, I'm trying here to look towards the camera and do that. It's quite artificial to do that for a long period of time. But there are some ways that you can set your cameras up and things that will be more natural to do that. So give it some consideration, because it really does make a difference with the people that you're communicating with and makes life easier for them too. And again, think about distractions, cutting those out wherever you can. Be that in person or online. We've talked about webcams, and again, think about quality of image as well that we're looking at. But observe the engagement with the other person. I've put some, quite jokingly, put some pictures up here, but haven't we all had that kind of meeting sometimes? You know, so, but again, if you've got somebody who is sat there looking at, don't just plow on. Yeah, pick up with it and say, oh, sorry, can I just check? I'm noticing that, do you need to be somewhere? Should we be closing off now? There's an authentic way of doing it, and they'll thank you for that. Or are you actually picking up, do you know this person is looking pretty bored now? Don't just keep ploughing on. Yeah, I'll give you a couple of tips in a few minutes, but start and ask some questions, start and engage them. Or we just tend to ignore it because it's not a very nice message that we're seeing visually. And again, think about how you dress. What impression do you want to give? And some people have got this very right over the last 12 months, and some people have got this very, very wrong. A colleague of mine had somebody turn up in a dressing gown the other day. And then somebody else hadn't put their camera on and accidentally put it on, and they got a towel wrapped around their head and they just got out of the shower. So, okay, those are accidents, but I think just in general, think about the impression that you want to create, whether you think it should be like that or not, that people make that judgment. They do, because you will make that judgment. I'm quite sure on certain people, they will make it of you.
I think that's why authenticity is also a big part of things like dress code is actually quite relevant to that. So for example, you know, the picture you've got on the screen there of a guy wearing a tie, if someone doesn't feel like they want to be wearing a tie and feels inappropriate for them, doesn't feel authentic. And on the flip side, someone wearing a t-shirt and joggers, if they are doing it because they think everyone else is, that doesn't feel authentic as well. So part of it is being you, whatever you're happy with. You know, for me, generally, like, this is typical for me, polo shirt type. That's what I feel comfortable. I'm happy to do. I hope that feels authentic. If I was sat in a shirt and tie, I don't think it'd come across as being me.
No, Michael, what are you doing? But it would be odd to the people who know you, wouldn't it? And you're right that when you don't feel comfortable, that comes across to people. They'll start and pick that up. I mean, I think it's quite interesting, the shifts that we've had over the last 12 months, that people have dressed down much more. For business in particular, and I'll be interested to see where that goes, really, because I think there's been lots of positives about the shifts that we've had in dress code and expectations too. So yeah, I think there's been some really good stuff to come out of that. So just quickly,
Karen, I say Andy's commented that does that mean he shouldn't be wearing his Buzz Lightyear pajamas?
I don't know. I'm a bit tempted to see him now, Andy, to be honest. But I'm not sure everybody can stand the shock. But we'll look forward to that one. Yeah, wait at the next network meeting. Yeah, let's give it a whirl. Oh, that's so good. Okay, so one of the things that I would always recommend is taking a coaching approach if we're going to engage with people. At the end of the day, it is just good communication. And what we're looking at is that our default setting is ask rather than tell. And we do with rather than to. So it's that collaborative approach with people. So here are some tips back to that ask rather than tell that will really help you listen and the other person feel engaged with you. Now, like I said, you're going to have to practice them. And at first they will feel a bit unnatural, a bit odd. Not to the other person, I'll guarantee you, they'll just think you are a great listener. So things like sounds like, so if somebody says something to you, sounds like that's been a tough week. Yeah, so you're sort of paraphrasing what they've just said to you. So just to summarise, now this is a great one if you're wanting to tie a meeting off, if you are feeling a bit like that with somebody. It's a nice way to close off a meeting. But what it also does is pulls together all those elements and then you can move forward. So what you're saying is, and can I just check I've got this right? Now, the thing is with all of these, you cannot fail. You absolutely cannot fail. If you've got it right, they'll go, yes, exactly. And you are right on the same page with them. If you've got it wrong, they tell you. And they go, no, it's, well, again, you've got it right. Now, the thing is, you have to listen to be able to do this. So if you're a person who is normally distracted, you can't be. So it will help you focus. Because if you're going to reflect this stuff back to people, you have to have listened.
One of the things I was taught, Karen, one of my first ever jobs was, so obviously this was relation to face-to-face meetings at the time, but I still think works online, is most meetings you have, generally actions come from that. So when I'm taking my note, if I'm writing something down that's an action, I put a star next to it as I'm writing it down. The reason I do that is at the end of the meeting, I will essentially summarize my actions. So it'll be along the lines of, so what I'm going to do is now send you this email, send you this document, etc., etc. It's something I've always stayed with me. It's kind of very much along the lines of what you're saying there.
Yeah. But again, it's so, and when it happens for us, we don't notice it. But I'll guarantee you, the people that you know you feel they're really understanding it will be doing some of this, but you won't notice it. Now, the one thing I would caution about is the good old British response. So you say to them, so what you're saying is, and you say it, and they go, and you go, right. So you carry on. Now, they haven't said, yeah, you're absolutely right, have they? They've said maybe a bit right, or actually more wrong than right, but we plough on anyway. So if you see that, say, I can just see there's maybe I've not quite got that right. Do you want to explain again to me? So can you see you've got opportunity after opportunity to interact with people in a really meaningful way there? So to summarise with that bit, here's the reminder: 2 ears, 1 mouth in that proportion. I do this for a job. I don't always get it right. But we do need to keep reminding ourselves. But the other thing is, you already know about you. So what I challenge you is, have that curiosity about other people. What don't you know about the situation? What don't you know about them? What could you benefit from learning from them? And then finally, be yourself. And it's easier said than done. And this is your best self, but be yourself, because to be frank, that's all you've got. So that's kind of the good news and the bad news. So that's the end of my information. I don't know if we've any other comments or questions or anything. I'll come off the screen share.
So before, obviously, if anyone does have any questions, please put it in the chat or the Q&A box, and I'm sure Karen will be happy to answer that. And I guess a point for me, Karen, is, do you think it's often, I'm talking in a business context here, really, that people who maybe are not authentic, the reason they are not is they're maybe doing something that they don't enjoy, they don't want to be doing, so they're trying to be something that doesn't suit them.
Yeah.
I can kind of think of my own experience really with that when probably in the last few years doing what I do now is probably you feel like you are more myself than I've ever been before. So I wonder how important that is to kind of, I guess, taking a step back to an extent and saying, am I doing what I want to be doing? And how important that might be.
Yeah, I do think you're right. And there's something about, I call it being comfortable in your own skin. And we know when we've found that, don't we? It just feels completely differently, and again, like many people, I've had jobs and roles in the past that, I just didn't enjoy and just weren't a fit for me, maybe the wrong organisation or whatever. I guess the challenge is that there are always going to be some things that take us out of our comfort zone that we don't particularly enjoy. I think the thing is about the authentic approach to me is we own up to that. So we don't pretend we're good at something we're not. We don't pretend we're enjoying every single second, or if we're struggling with something, we share. And again, I'm going to go back to Andy's question earlier. I'm not talking about throwing yourself to the lions here. There's a time to share and a time not to share. But it's something that I use, for example, when we look at managing difficult conversations with people. And quite often I had a client and she would turn up really suited and booted to any redundancy meetings. They were very antagonistic with unions, and it was just a clash every single time. So she kind of came in this suit of armour that was a business suit. And what we looked at was how she actually felt about this, and she dreaded these meetings. But to be honest, she was really seen as a bit of a bitch by everybody else. She wasn't that person. So what we worked on, she actually got the courage to say at one of the meetings, she turned up without the power suit, just in a normal business clothes, and said, right, I just want to share with you, I absolutely hate these meetings. This isn't why I came into this job. I loathe and detest having to discuss how people being made redundant. And I can't even begin to understand the stress that you must be going through right now. But let's look at seeing if we can get the best out of this for everybody and make it as painless as possible for you. All of a sudden, they had a dialogue. Now, that took such courage from her because of the relationships they've had. But can you see that genuineness there? And do you know something? It was dead easy for her because she meant it. It was way easier than sitting there with the papers and going, right, everybody. So to me, that's what it's about. There's some vulnerability in there, really, and about putting you out there that isn't throwing yourself to the wolves, really.
I think they made a really interesting point earlier about kind of what the impact of the last year and essentially using video will have. And obviously we're talking about dress code, but I also think there's a bigger point on this, is that I personally have found the conversations I've had in the last year, on the whole, have been better than they ever were before. And I think the reason for that is that essentially most people are doing it from home.
Yeah.
So there probably were, just the nature of being at home, they are being more authentic. You are essentially people, we've all been invited to lots of people's homes in the last year or so, not physically, but through this medium of video. And I think relationships are built better. And what I hope happens is when we do go back to when we are meeting more people in person, we don't, you kind of talked, you mentioned earlier, the suit of armor. How many times have people have gone into this business mode person because they're in an office environment or in a business environment, they're not themselves. And I think it's changed a lot in the last year, and I hope that continues. And like I said, I don't think it's just about dress code. I think it's the whole, our whole demeanor.
No, I think you're right, and I've really seen that myself with like you say, how people have presented themselves very differently, and some people you've been quite surprised at me. I thought, oh right, didn't expect that when I saw you. But that's okay, isn't it? Because again, if you've got that stuff about the trust, the values, it isn't mattering too much. Let's say about having this sort of squeaky corporate persona around you. I set my office up like this. I do lots of online training. I want to keep out the distractions. That's why I set it up in the way that I did. You know, but again, I still gave thoughts of what I want to present from people, but I'm there up front and centre being myself, really. So I was still able to do that. But you're right, there's something there about personalising this and not apologising for it. We don't need any more cookie cutter business people. We need people who just have the confidence to be themselves, I think.
Yeah, I think it's been great personally how we've seen the cat walking across the screen, the kids running around in the background, the Amazon man with the delivery and stuff like that. Because all of us have that in our lives, but for some reason before I think all this we tried to hide it to an extent, that kind of pretend it didn't exist when we're in a business environment. And I think it's great that we no longer do that, or we haven't done that mainly, and we'll see how it will come out the other end.
When I do a lot of my training with people, and particularly with managers and leaders, they use the word professional. How do you need to be? We need to be professional. And then I start to challenge them on that, because do you know, I hate that word. I think it's absolutely meaningless and it really gets in the way. And when I start to question, what do you mean by professional? And actually what they mean is this really standoffish persona. And we say, well, can't you be professional, as in doing a good job, engendering trust, giving people good value, and be yourself, be that other stuff, be different? So I think there's the challenge for everybody, really. And you're right, I think we've started those steps, whether we liked it or not, this last 12 months.
Oh, absolutely. No, thank you, Karen. That's been great. I see there it says, spot on, Karen. Practical, meaningful, good Northern advice.
Thank you very much. Well, there's as much of a compliment as you could ever want, isn't there?
That sums you up perfectly, Karen. No, so thank you very much for your time. And like I said, obviously, if people are watching this on playback via whatever medium, please do get in contact. I mean, Karen, if anyone wants to get a hold of you, and obviously we can see your website over your right shoulder. I assume there's other places people can get hold of you as well.
There is, yeah. If I can just share this slide, actually, there we go. So it's all on there. I'm regular on social media as well, but you know, just get in touch, have a chat. If you've got any questions or anything, I'm always happy to dig down and explore any issues that are going on. So yeah, please reach out, please connect. That would be great.
Well, thank you. Yeah, so thank you everyone for joining us today. I really appreciate that. As I put in the comments, hopefully everyone saw that it'll go on the YouTube page later today. Also go on our website as well. So please, you know, if you want to watch it back, or if there's anyone you think would benefit from watching it, please, you know, pass it on. And yeah, and finally, thank you, Karen. As always, thank you for your time. It's always useful information and always something for us to think about.
That's great. Thanks very much, Michael. Thank
you, everyone, and have a great day.